Welcome back to the Beonby Show. This is another spontaneous podcast. How are we doing today? Me. That's right. It's only me today. So buckle up, buckaroo. I'm just kidding. Unless you do need to buckle up, then please do. It's important. So today we are going to be finishing the Constitution mini-series that I started with Brady, and I'm going to end by myself because I hate happy endings. So in the first episode out of 3, we discussed the first 3 articles, which are the most important, which are the legislative, executive, and judicial branches, because those are the 3 branches of our government. And in the second one, we talked about the rest of the articles. And in today's episode, I'm going to be talking about all 27 amendments. I have them in front of me, and we're going to go through them, and we're going to discuss them, and it's going to be great. So, if you need a little refresher from last time, the article that talks about amendments is the 5th one. And basically the way you do an amendment is you have to propose it, and then you have to ratify it. I'm not going to go into all the details. If you want, you can go check out the last Constitution episode, the rest of the articles, I think it was called. And you can check it out there, and we talk about the 5th article there. But today we're just going to be going over what the 5th article entails and how it has been used 27 times. But I am positive that there have been more than 27 proposals, but they just haven't been ratified, and that's why we don't have them in our Constitution today. And I bet they were some pretty ridiculous ones. So let's just get right into it. So there are 27 amendments. We're going to start with the first one. The first one is the freedom of religion, speech, petition, and assembly. And actually, let me just say something. So the first 10 amendments of the Constitution are what is known as the Bill of Rights. This was put in place I think 1791 or 92 or 93 or something like that, because there weren't many rights explicitly stated in the Constitution, so they were like, yeah, we should do this. So the first 10 amendments, I'll say when we get to the 11th one, but the first 10 are called the Bill of Rights. So the first one in the Bill of Rights, because these are all rights, the entire Bill of Rights, all of those amendments are rights that people and states have. So the First Amendment, the first one of the Bill of Rights, and the first one ever, is freedom of religion, speech, petition, and assembly. So you can practice whatever faith you want. You can be Jewish, Christian, Muslim, whatever, and you can't be discriminated against for that. And you can also say what you want, which is great. Freedom of speech, freedom of thought. That's pretty awesome. Freedom of petition and assembly is like freedom of press. Press can say whatever. They can criticize the government, which is actually something you don't see in a lot of you don't see in a lot of countries today, like Russia. You can't really do. There's a lot of people that criticize the government and then thrown in jail or something. China, you definitely can't do it. A lot of Middle Eastern countries, you can't criticize the government, but here you can, which is great because the government's not perfect. And so that's the First Amendment. Next one is the right to bear arms, and you may think that means you have the right to physically have arms that have brown or black hair on them, and you'd be correct, except you wouldn't be, because this one is talking about guns. You can have guns, you can bear guns, and you can use them if you are attacked, and you have them, but you gotta have a license. And so a lot of people they think that it's so scary to see a person in a car with a gun going down the road, which I'll admit it is, because you don't usually see that, because in all the news recently it's been a lot of shootings, unfortunately, have been happening. But if they have the license and they're not mentally ill or don't have any ill thoughts, then they're not doing anything wrong, because if they have their license and they know what they're doing, then they're doing things correctly under the Second Amendment. So yeah, that one just says you can have guns and use them if necessary. So the Third Amendment is no quartering of soldiers, which basically means you can't be forced to house soldiers, which is something that happened during the American Revolution. So you can't do that. And I don't think you can't be forced to have soldiers in your home. And I don't think this is very important one, because there's not a lot of controversy around it, and there's never been a Supreme Court case dealing with it, so generally not that important. But still in the Bill of Rights, so it's more important than the others. than some others. The Fourth Amendment is really important. This one is protection against illegal searches and seizures without a warrant or probable cause. This one is big. So you can't be searched or have anything taken away from you unless they have a warrant. The police need to have a warrant. So if they get a canine, that is like a physical warrant. And a warrant basically means this: they have permission to go and search your stuff, because you can't just do that under the Fourth Amendment unless they have a warrant. So they can go obtain a warrant, or they can get a dog, a canine, which is like a warrant. And then probable cause is like if you get pulled over for a like speeding and you get a ticket, but then the officer looks in the back of your car and you have 15 pounds of like marijuana, then that's probable cause, because they have probable cause to see that you are not only speeding, you have an enormous amount of illegal drugs in your vehicle. So that's probable cause, and that's what a warrant means. So yeah, you have protection against illegal searches and seizures unless the police have a warrant or a probable cause. So the next one is the Fifth Amendment. This one is protection against self-incrimination, double jeopardy, and protection of due process and right to a grand jury. So double jeopardy means you can't be tried for the same crime twice. So if you are tried for the crime of, like, I don't know, burgling someone's home, and then you're found not guilty, you can't be brought to that case again. So that's what just double jeopardy means. Protection of due process is if you are a citizen of the United States, you get all rights that a citizen would have when you're in court, and we'll get to those later, which is in the Sixth and Seventh and Eighth Amendment. So yeah, there's that. And you also have the right to remain silent, which is what basically self-incrimination is. So you don't have to legally speak. And fun fact, if you are being arrested, if the police try and get you to say stuff, which they can use against you in court, because like they say anything you say will be used against you in a court of law. I don't remember the entire thing. I'm not a police officer. But as soon as you say like the word lawyer, they have to stop talking to you, because like that means you want to speak to your lawyer and you don't want to be dealing with them right now. So you just should be quiet so that you don't self-incriminate yourself, essentially, indirectly. So yep, there's that. And now we're on to the the court rights. Court rights. So the Sixth Amendment is a right to a speedy and public trial, impartial jury, and right to counsel. So this basically means you have a right to a speedy and public trial. I'm not sure what the exact what speedy is literally defined as, but I think it's like some period of like 120 days or something. I don't remember. I think I learned about it, but I don't remember the exact day. Public trial, obviously public. It's not like a private thing. And then an impartial jury of your peers is just like exactly what it sounds like. So yeah, that's the Sixth Amendment. And then the Seventh Amendment is kind of like just continuing on to that. So the Sixth Amendment was about criminal cases, but for the Seventh Amendment, it's about common cases. So not for like really serious things. So for the Seventh Amendment, you get a right to a trial by jury in common law cases. So yeah, you get to be judged by a jury in the Seventh Amendment. As we move on to the Eighth Amendment, we get to protection against cruel and unusual punishment and no excessive bail imposed. So this one is pretty interesting because it actually protects you from ridiculous punishments. So if you steal a tube of chapstick from your local Walgreens, they can't like sentence you to death by hanging, because that is a ridiculous and cruel and unusual punishment. They also can't put you in jail for that same they can put you in. I don't know how the legal system works, but I guess if you went to jail for that crime, your bail couldn't be like $1 million or $100,000 because you stole a singular tube of chapstick, because that's just ridiculous. And so this Eighth Amendment is just saying, don't be ridiculous and don't be a jerk when it comes to sentencing people. So you can't have a ridiculous punishment for something ridiculous, ridiculously small, I guess, or have a very small punishment for something ridiculously big. And you can't have what's it called? You can't have a ridiculous bail for a very small crime. So the Ninth Amendment, we've moved on from the court rights now, and we are now on to the powers for states and people. The Ninth Amendment is the enumeration of rights in the Constitution won't be used against the people. So it basically just talks about rights that the people have when they are in court. Not really in court, but like in general. And the 10th Amendment is the reserved powers to the states. So that's the Bill of Rights. We have concluded talking about the Bill of Rights. So the Bill of Rights are the first 10 amendments. They just give you some rights, which is pretty epic. I like rights. So moving on to the rest of the amendments, there are no like sections in the amendments anymore. It's just like a free-for-all. So here we go. 11th Amendment is the states are protected from being sued by citizens of another state. So if I am Indiana, or if like I'm an Indiana citizen, I can't sue Wisconsin. So that's just how that works. Yeah, that one isn't too important. 12th Amendment is separated balloting procedures for president and vice president. So you put them as a team. So it just revises the electoral college and makes it so that what's it called? For the number of I don't know how to pronounce this word, electors. The number of electors that you have for your state is the number of representatives that you have in the state plus 2, because every state has 2 senators. So you just add 2 to the number of representatives you have, and that's the amount of electors you have. Still don't know how to say that. So yeah, that's the revision of the electoral college. That's a really important one. And then for the 13th Amendment, this is the Reconstruction period. So these next 3 amendments, I guess this is like the only section other than the Bill of Rights. This one was made after the Civil War. So as most people know, the Civil War was fought over slavery, the issue of slavery, and whether slavery would be kept in the United States. The Confederacy, which is the South, they wanted to keep slavery, and the North, which is the Union or the Yankees, they wanted to get rid of slavery. So obviously the North ended up winning, and the 13th Amendment is the abolition of slavery. Woohoo. So that's all you need to know about that. The 14th Amendment is you grant all former slaves gain citizenship and equal protection, and they get the established principle of selective incorporation. So basically, former slaves get due process now, which is pretty cool. And then the 15th Amendment, which is the last Reconstruction Amendment, is African American men could vote, which is awesome. So you get more voters now, and you get more opinions, which is always a good thing. And now we're on to the 16th Amendment, which is the federal government decided to be jerks to the people, but I'm kidding. It like you think they're being jerks, but the money's useful to them. 16th Amendment is the federal government establishes federal income tax, so they take your money after you earn it. Not all of it, but like a good portion, depending on where you live. So the 17th Amendment is it requires popular election of U.S. senators. So there is a direct elections for U.S. senators now, which is interesting, I guess. The next one is really cool and interesting. The next one is the 18th Amendment, which is prohibition of sale, manufacturing, and consumption of alcohol. So, this is where all the gangs, like the mafia and Al Capone, they just started selling it. Really, really famous and infamous criminals. So, excuse me. So that's a really interesting amendment. And then the next one is also really awesome because now women have the right to vote. It's ridiculous though that this amendment was established in 1920. So from the beginning of the United States to the time period where women had to vote was 144 years. It's funny, but it's not. I don't think we should have had that amendment very, very soon, if not originally in the original Constitution. So at least it happened, which is always a good thing. Better late than never is what I always say. But obviously everyone would have preferred it if it happened earlier. So women have the right to vote. Women have suffrage, which is great. Adds to the popular sovereignty. Always good. 20th Amendment. So This is, I think, what is called the lame duck amendment. So the president and vice president's term of office begins on January 20th, which is when they're inaugurated, and no longer in March because it was originally in March, I guess. And I don't know why it's called the lame duck period. I think maybe it's because the period between when they're elected and when they're inaugurated is like, what's going on? It's like lame. I don't know where the duck part comes from, but you know what? Just call it lame duck. Who cares? 21st Amendment is the repeal of the 18th Amendment, so you can have alcohol now. Congratulations. All of Al Capone's work for nothing. So that's good. You can drink, you can sell it, you can make it, you can drink it, you can get addicted. Everything's good. Very, very good. The 22nd Amendment is the presidents are now limited to 2 terms. So, like, George Washington could have served for life if he really wanted to, because, George Washington his election was kind of a joke. It was just kind of like everyone trying to make him go into office. And then he eventually said yes, and he quit, like, voluntarily after 2 terms, even though he could have served his whole life and became, like, the supreme ruler. And then his son could have gone to become president, and like, I don't know, maybe that'd be nepotism, but anyway. So yeah, presidents are limited to only 2 terms, or a maximum of 8 years. So, 23rd Amendment. DC, congratulations, I'm so proud of you. You guys now get presidential electors. You guys get 3. All you get is 3. Barely a difference, but it can make a difference. 3 can make a difference. So, DC now has presidential electors. It's kind of funny how the capital of America is the last to be given presidential electors, but or one of the last. But it's just, I guess, how it works sometimes. 24th. So now poll taxing is illegal, so you don't have to pay to vote anymore, which is something that, like, a lot of racist people established after African American men were allowed to vote. They would establish poll taxes, so it would make it harder for them to vote, because obviously they didn't want their opinion because they're racist. But now it's illegal, so they can vote and they can do whatever they want freely. 25th Amendment is the presidential succession, and basically it states that if, like, the president dies or gets impeached or whatever, then the succession of who will become president and, like, vice president and whoever goes with the succession will follow. So after the president is the vice president, and then after the vice president it's the Speaker of the House, I believe, and then the Secretary of State. So the current president, Donald Trump, so if he died, wouldn't be unlikely. He's very old, or got impeached, could happen, because he's being impeached right now. Then the vice president, who is Mike Pence, he would take over, and if he got impeached or died, then Nancy Pelosi would take over, and then if she died or got impeached, then the Secretary of State, who I believe is, like, his name is like Rex Tillerson or something, he would take over. So that's basically all that's saying. And then the 26th Amendment is the 18-year-olds have the right to vote. Now, this is a very controversial one because a lot of people argue that 18-year-olds don't have enough knowledge to be able to vote like a knowledgeable citizen, because they're still teenagers. Like, just 1 month ago, they were having to ask to go relieve themselves in school, but now they get to vote for the next president. Like, yeah, I will agree that doesn't make sense, but at the same time, this amendment was established during the Vietnam War, and lots of 18-year-olds were being sent out, and they were like, hold up, that doesn't make sense. Why can you send me out to a country I've never been in to die for a country that won't let me pick who is making that decision for me? So that also makes sense. So it's a very controversial one, but still in place. So as soon as you turn 18, you can go to the voting booth every 4 years and you can vote, which is pretty cool, but it depends on how you use it. Man, water's good. And then the final 27th Amendment is congressional pay raises will only take effect after the next election. So if you get a pay raise, like if you were a senator from Mississippi and you get a pay raise, on November 7th of 2016, you cannot receive that pay raise until November 9th. Or, no, when are elections? I completely forgot. Yeah, November 8th. So you couldn't be able to receive your pay raise until after the election. So, pretty cool. And that is all 27 amendments. So, yeah, so we first had the Bill of Rights, and then we got a couple, and then we got the Reconstruction Amendments after the Civil War, and then we got the rest of them. So we've got everything from right to bear arms, for right to have guns, to the repeal of prohibition. So as you can see, the amendments are very varied, and they have big variety, but that's good because change is always going to happen. And if the world our founding fathers lived in 1787 was the world we lived in now, I don't think we would have made much progression from that time, if any at all. So it's good that things change, is all I'm saying. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So I hope you've enjoyed listening to this podcast. Maybe you've learned a little more. Maybe you've learned a little less. I don't know. That's not my decision to make. But I hope you enjoy nonetheless. And thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Beonby Show. Please consider supporting us monthly to improve our podcast. And you can also send us voice messages now. So if you want to send me a voice message, you can go to anchor.fm/Ben894, I think, and press send a voice message, and you can send me a voice message, and maybe it'll be in the next podcast episode. How do you know? So maybe just try it. And also, as always, thank you to Anchor for sponsoring this. And that's pretty much it. Thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. And goodbye.